Hey folks, welcome back once again to Indaba Africa. This is Chris. Well, it's August 12th, 2020, and we've seen the impact of the supposedly massive Jozi to Stellenbosch march. And people who didn't march from Johannesburg, but rather rocked up in Stellenbosch and attempted to cause chaos with their bigotry, their racism, their vile hatred. Let's talk a little bit about what happened today in Stellenbosch. Well, as we saw a small group, rather disappointing for their massive protest that they planned with thousands of people that were supposed to rock up in Stellenbosch, approximately 40 to 50 malcontents, lawbreakers, lockdown violators, troublemakers, and people with hate in their hearts showed up to make a show of things, ignoring history and displaying their outright bigotry. Shouting things through megaphones like "Black Power, no sharing," while waving bricks. These hate-mongering, radical bigots said they were simply protesting peacefully as they stood there shaking bricks in their hands and making threats against people. Never mind the vile things that were mentioned on their Facebook page, announcing the march from 9 a.m. until death, that they intended to kill white people. Well, if you want to kill white people, you're probably in the wrong place, Rocco. You ever check the demographics of Stellenbosch? Just a small minority in that town, white folks. Putting signs up and saying things like, "The enemy is cornered." What enemy exactly are you talking about? Quoting Che Guevara about the revolution. What revolution would that be? Perhaps you missed history, but South Africa became a majority-ruled country in 1994, 26 years ago. Long before most of you idiots that were standing out there today in Stellenbosch were even alive. Perhaps this is what we get from an African National Congress government that fails to supply textbooks to school or provide teachers who aren't pedophiles that prey on their students. We get uneducated, radical lunatics who are full of hate in their hearts. The enemy is cornered. Total takeover. 9 a.m. till death. Battlefield Stellenbosch. Now, for a government that devotes endless resources to hunt down virtually non-existent so-called terrorist groups and actually infiltrates tiny terrorist groups that no one even knows exist except for government intelligence services like the Boermog, sits around on the hands for ages while we see people against gangsterism and drugs become a terrorist group and then finally get off their rectum and do something about it. Yet they seem to have no ability or no interest or no desire to pursue these sort of hate-filled, nonsensical groups. Hate speech, lockdown violations, violating social distancing norms, failure to wear a mask, unlawful assembly, no permit. And how many of these people are in detention tonight? Not many. Racism run amok in a country with a long history and a painful history of racism, stoked by a government whose own president says nonsensical racist comments on television, tells the country about our 50 million people. Never mind the fact that South Africa's population is north of 58 million. What about those other 8 million, President Cyril Ramaphosa? Are they not your people? Aren't you the president of South Africa? Last I checked, you weren't the president of the Zulu nation or the Xhosa nation or the Venda people or the Basotho people. You're the president of all of South Africa. Of course, we know in South Africa, it's party before people. The nation comes second. The African National Congress comes first. We've been reminded of that recently by President Cyril Ramaphosa, who said that he will not weaken the ANC. Who gives a flip about the ANC? It's a political party. Stop your nonsense. This isn't a clan. It's a representative democracy. A poorly run one, but it's a representative democracy nonetheless. Let me read a few comments from some of the lovely things that people said in support of this march from Jozi to Stellenbosch. You know, the one with thousands that were supposed to show up and 40 to 50 did show up. This from Tutu Sekwati. "We're with you in spirit, comrades. The real problem is Stellenbosch in particular and capitalism in general. Not this rhetoric that our people are poor because of the ANC. If another party governs, material conditions of our people will still remain the same." That's yet to be seen. No other party has governed since 1994 under the new dispensation. Only the African National Congress has governed since then. This from the African child, Halangweni. "May the spirit of grand ancestors guide you and protect you, guerrillas. We are with you. Lishifa Likife." What is this all about? Guerrillas. Guerrillas in a peaceful, democratic nation in which people have the right to vote and exercise that, those who bother to show up. You need guerrillas for majority rule, which is already in place. And this from Lunga Kolisa Manchasa. We stand with you through and through. You must remember that those who speak ill of this progressive march are speaking from three interrelated positions: privilege, ignorance, and fear of the consequences of mass awareness about where the plight of the masses is located. Some defend Stellenbosch because otherwise their entire culture rests in its continued existence. Some defend it because they have acquired an instinct of docility. And others defend Stellenbosch for a sadder reason: mere ignorance, as I said, land liberation. What a bunch of nonsense, horse cock. Total cock, ladies and gentlemen. Boy there, Lunga. Your understanding of history is so bizarre as to be unbelievable. Or this from the lovely Commissar Sankara Mgulugulu, who says, all the Western European grandsons and daughters, they should pack their bags and vacate our African nourishing land. This is our land, and our history cannot be traced outside the African continent. The wealth of our mineral resources and the wealth that is the upper soil shall benefit us Africans, not the grand tenants, those who their great-grandparents, they colonized our ancestors and established their new world order economic system that benefits the circle of European siblings. Well, the racism, the bigotry, and the nonsense, the lack of historical perspective are so rampant in these things as to not warrant spending the next half hour explaining the stupidity and the racism behind it. You see, you little morons, everybody comes from Africa, if you believe in evolution. Get over yourself. The Bantu peoples colonized southern Africa and displaced the Khoisan San, hunting them and chasing the San in particular into the Kalahari, from what today is Zimbabwe, and from South Africa. Privilege, ignorance, and the fear of consequence and mass awareness. No, my friend, I think, Mr. Lungu Kolisi Manchasa, that people are all too happy for the masses to be aware of why they're suffering, why they're in misery, why life is not improving in 26 years under the African National Congress. What's it about? It's about misrule. It's about malgovernance. It's about race-based policies that harm all South Africans. And it's about nonsense like these people who make these ridiculous comments posted on Facebook that are full of bigotry and hate. Facebook, which says it protects people against hate speech. Interesting. A lot of hate speech. These were the tame comments, ladies and gentlemen. I didn't bother to pull up the vile, disgusting things that I found on their Facebook page for the Jozi to Stellenbosch march. Where is the president of South Africa? President Cyril Ramaphosa. What does he have to say about this? Why is the African National Congress government, its Minister of Justice, Lomola, its Chief of Police, Beketsile, why are they not out talking about these threats to public order and asking the simple questions like, what revolution? Did you miss it? The revolution's happened. The African National Congress rules South Africa. And why are you blaming others for the ANC's failure? Why are you marching from the wealthiest part of South Africa, from Johannesburg to Stellenbosch, a minor municipality in the Western Cape? Could it be that you fear that other political parties can actually rule South Africa far better than the ANC? Let's put this in perspective. These clowns marched from Johannesburg in Gauteng, the wealthiest square footage on the continent of Africa. More millionaires and billionaires live in that area than anywhere else, including black ones. They marched on Stellenbosch, a small tourist, farming, vineyard town with historical links, whose population is predominantly majority colored or mixed race, 52.2% according to the 2011 census for South Africa, the most recent. Stellenbosch had 155,733 residents, of whom 52.2% were colored. 28.1% were black African. So who exactly is it you're marching against in Stellenbosch? The 70, 80% of the people right there who are not white? 8 out of 10 people in Stellenbosch aren't white. You geniuses can't even do math. 18.5% of the city of Stellenbosch is white. And that's what you're marching against. But here's the real reason they're marching, ladies and gentlemen. The Democratic Alliance Despite the fact that whites make up 18% of Stellenbosch, the Democratic Alliance, which is often fraudulently claimed to be a white party by the African National Congress, and their wonderful fellow travelers, the economic freedom fighters, mostly former disgruntled African National Youth Congress members who followed Julius Malema out of the party. 69% of Stellenbosch under DA, 30 seats in the city council, 69% of the vote. Yet only 18% of the town is white. So once again, the myth that the DA is a white party is horse manure. It's total cock. And that's why they marched in Stellenbosch. Plus their fragile understanding of history and their inferiority complex, scared by a little town in the Western Cape and what it may stand for in their minds, not in anyone else's minds. Only about half or less than half of the white population of South Africa are actually white Afrikaans-speaking Afrikaners, which is only a handful of people, 2.4, 2.6 million South Africans out of 60 million. And you fear them? My, how fragile your egos are, how sad your existence, how pathetic your life, which I can only attribute to your indoctrination and your piss-poor education at the hands of the African National Congress, who've had time now to educate 2 full generations of schoolgoers, school learners, from K through 12 in 26 years. And what do we have? A population that's educated more poorer than it was under the National Party. That is truly reprehensible and sad. That's a low bar to get under, yet the ANC has managed so bad in the country that they have to lower the passing rates for examinations for the pass-through rate to go to university to 30%. Can you imagine that, ladies and gentlemen? Would you be proud of saying that, yes, welcome to my country. In my country, we have engineers who got 30% in math, and now they're at university. Are you serious? Instead of improving education, they've lowered standards. And now we have generations of idiots in South Africa who know nothing, running around with hashtag science must fall. Really? Science must fall. Yikes. Let's contrast this with Johannesburg, ladies and gentlemen. Johannesburg is 76.4% black, 5% colored, 4.9% Asian or Indian, and 13.7% white. Wow, there's not much difference, just a little bit more higher percentage in Stellenbosch than there is in Gauteng. Yet they weren't marching in Gauteng against white people. They went from wealthy Gauteng to Stellenbosch to march against Stellenbosch because it represents something that they can't wrap their minds around. What's also interesting here, ladies and gentlemen, is who speaks what language. And this is another reason that they don't like Stellenbosch, where 68% of the population speak Afrikaans. That's right. Most of the colors and most of the whites speak Afrikaans. And that's the unforgivable sin, isn't it? Yes, that they speak a language that you just don't like. It distorts your racist views of the world. How weak life must be for you. 68% of Stellenbosch residents speak Afrikaans. But wait, 21% speak Xhosa. That's a black African language. And you're marching on Stellenbosch where 1 in 5 people speak Xhosa? How sad for you. 7% of Stellenbosch speak English as a first language. Let's compare that with Johannesburg or Gauteng, where these malcontent, racist bigots came from, purportedly. The number 1 language in Gauteng is not even an African language. At least Afrikaans is an African language, one that developed in Africa off of its roots from an Indo-European Dutch language, plus languages and vocabulary from Indonesia and Malaysia, as well as African languages. That's actually an African language. But in Johannesburg, the language that these people are coming to throw a revolution, overthrow, and wipe out white people in Stellenbosch, who are a mere minority, less than 1 in 5 people in Stellenbosch is white, they're coming there. Yet the top language, the most widely spoken first language in Johannesburg is, ladies and gentlemen, wait for it, English, with nearly a third of the population's first language being English in Gauteng, in Johannesburg. 19.6% of the population is Zulu. So less than 1 in 5 people in Johannesburg speaks a first language like Zulu, African language. Then Afrikaans is 12%. Wow, 12% of Johannesburg's people speak Afrikaans. Xhosa is 5%. You add that together, that's only 1 in 4 people speaking one of those 2 main African languages. And that's what bothers them so much. This is sad, ladies and gentlemen. It's pathetic and it's sad. But we shouldn't dismiss it. This group of malcontents and their vile race-based hatred marching from Johannesburg to Stellenbosch, Jozi to Stellenbosch. They're marching to take total takeover. 9 a.m. till death. Battlefield Stellenbosch. These aren't the words of protesters. These aren't the words of people. And what are they protesting? What are they protesting? The country's led by a majority party, predominantly occupied by black Africans. What exactly is they're protesting? Yeah, they're protesting myths and propaganda like white monopoly capital, white privilege, and nonsense like that. While every rule, every regulation, every law in the country is written to the benefit of the historically disadvantaged, which would be the majority of the population. Yet despite that, they have to continually lower standards because the ANC doesn't care about the people of South Africa, whether they be white, Indian, colored, or black. The ANC, much like its compatriots to the north in ZANU-PF, cares about ANC cadre. That doesn't mean there aren't caring politicians in the African National Congress who actually are patriotic and care about South Africa. But clearly they're not running the party. Clearly they're not in any positions of power. For if they are, they're shameful in their silence. While hate-filled groups like this, hate-mongering groups, attack people based on the color of their skin. Can you imagine such a thing on April 27th of 1994 that 26 years later, government ignored bigotry? Government perpetuated bigotry and racism would be the order of the day. Hardly what we all dreamt of at the end of apartheid. Yet here we are, ladies and gentlemen, 26 years later. But we can't take this lightly. It's not a joke. 40 to 50 people, we might chuckle about it. We might go, ha, ha, ha. But ladies and gentlemen, I've far too often in Africa seen a small group, a small protest turn into a massive protest almost instantaneously. It doesn't take much for chaos to reign. And the government of South Africa, under the majority ANC party, is reaping a whirlwind. Let's see. Well, it's sowing a whirlwind, I should say. It's not reaping. It's sowing a whirlwind. And we will see what comes of that whirlwind. But in the meantime, where is Sir Ramaphosa? Why does he not speak out against this vile bigotry and hatred? Where is the African National Congress? Where is the Institute for Race Relations? Where are the international actors as a minority is attacked based on the color of their skin? An immutable fact that people can't change, they're born into. And we see distortions and lies, grandparents, for people whose families have been in South Africa for 17 generations. 17 or more generations. Many of whom families have been there longer than some of the Bantu. Shameful, disgraceful, pathetic. And it's about time someone stood up and said something and did something about it. Ladies and gentlemen, South Africa is in a bad way. And the only way it's going to change is people go to the ballot box and remove the African National Congress from power to send them a clear message in the 2021 municipal elections. That they don't get to simply rule into perpetuity and loot and pilfer and racialize all of society. The concept of a rainbow nation was legitimate. The practitioners of it are making it illegitimate. Well, I do hope you found this a thought-provoking and interesting video talking about the fizzled march from Jozi to Stellenbosch. Nonetheless, it's something people should pay attention to and be concerned about, particularly when the government takes no action to deal with perpetrators of this hate-mongering. Well, folks, if you're not a subscriber to this channel, I feel I should ask you to take a moment and subscribe to the channel by smashing that button right down there. And be sure to toggle that bell icon so you get notified of any updates on my channel, whether it's a prepared video like this or a live stream or one of my special features in which I interview someone of interest from around the world or South Africa. So please feel free to subscribe and hit that bell icon. And also feel free to leave comments on this video. I welcome comments. I'll do my best to look at all of them and address those that are appropriate. And finally, I ask that you smash the like button because likes drive viewership. Thank you so much for your time, for your patronage. God bless. Have a safe day. And let's chuckle at these clowns, but let's take their threats very seriously when they threaten to murder people based on the color of their skin. God bless.